Week 3 of this Prismatic Draft League season, and this week there's really not a lot to say before the replays. Here are once again the standings as of the end of Week 2. This is, as always, the same table that was in Monday's video. So, of course, the Halifax Masquerade Men set can be found there. You can see what happened to us in Week 3, but we're going to find out about the rest of the league now, mostly. But, of course, still early in the season, still a lot of room for movement, not a ton of separation at the top or the bottom so far. Anything can happen going forward. No trades this week. It looks like the trade market kind of quieted down for a bit, although next week there will be some interesting developments. And there are going to be only 6 sets to cover because I'm recording this later than usual. In fact, I've already played Week 4 at the time that I'm recording this, but there is still one set from Week 3 that I can't account for. The Foraging Furrets and Varsity Farmboys were scheduled to play. I don't think they did. I don't know what happened there, and as far as I know right now, like a day before this video goes up, there is no official outcome still to that set. So that one's just going to be unaccounted for. I feel like it's the first time in a while that I've had one not accounted for. It's an upside to delaying these videos to Fridays, but it does still happen. And there are still 6 more. Let's get right to it. And this week we'll start with the Azurbe Chatots taking on the Hisuian Houndstones. The Chatots look like they've probably brought the Bastrodon setup stuff that we're used to, with, of course, Thwacky able to set grassy terrain to give it some recovery, Comfey able to use boosted priority floral healing in grassy terrain to give it big recovery, and of course Drifblim able to activate Unburden with a Grassy Seed in grassy terrain if that's what it wants to do. And it can spread status, it can click Strength Sap into things, it can set Tailwind. Bastrodon doesn't really benefit that much from Tailwind, but we do also see the Float Soul on the Chatot side this week. So Float Soul could be here for some strong offense into Pokemon like Salazzle, Piloswine, even Bronzong, and Indeedee. But it also could be setting up itself with, I think it gets Bulk Up. I don't know if it gets any other setup moves, but hey, that's not a bad one when you have Pokemon like Thwacky and Comfey backing you up. We do also see the Alchemy. I think we've seen Calm Mind Alchemy in the past. It still could have Decorate available into a Pokemon like Thwacky or Float Soul, but it's certainly a setup threat in its own right. On the Houndstones side, we see a pretty typical mix for this team so far this season. They have an obvious Trick Room option with Bronzong, Piloswine, Indeedee. They could set Tailwind with Vivillon or Flamigo and use those Pokemon as fast attackers, or Indeedee, again, of course, able to set its own Psychic Terrain and then click Expanding Force. And of course, they have Salazzle as a very fast Pokemon with, outside of Psychic Terrain, the ability to click Fake Out, or just poison things with Poison Gas or various other disruptive techs available. So it looks like a fairly flexible composition from the Houndstones this week, and we'll see how would they handle the setup threats from the Chatots right now. So we see Thwacky and Drifblim leading. That suggests to me that it is Grassy Seed on Burden Drifblim against Flamigo and Bronzong. We do see the Grassy Seed. Bronzong goes straight for Terra Steel. Okay. Drifblim just throws off a Psychic immediately into Flamigo. Good damage, more than half. Big U-turn back into Thwacky, and we see the Indeedee come in and set Psychic Terrain. Bronzong now resists that Thwacky U-turn, really doesn't take very much damage, but Bastrodon comes in as Bronzong sets Trick Room. So, looks like Bastrodon is actually slower, well, it can be slower than Bronzong. I just checking the stats on the sides there. Bastrodon has slightly lower base speed, so that's not a bad thing for it in this position. Of course, it can start setting up with Iron Defense if that's what it wants to do. There could be physical attacks coming out from the Bronzong, if so they're probably not very strong. If these Pokemon both just click Expanding Force, it'll be interesting to see what that does to Bastrodon. It is resisted, but it is a very strong attack. Maybe not so much from Bronzong. Oh, that's probably why the Bronzong... No, that doesn't make sense. Never mind. I was about to say something silly. We're going to move on from that. But Bastrodon does also have access to Wide Guard, but of course that means that it has to play very passively. And one thing that is not as good for the Chatots is that Drifblim is reliably going to be the fastest Pokemon on the field now that it's activated on Burden, I assume. So it's a bit of a sitting duck in Trick Room unless Bastrodon covers it with Wide Guard. But again, unless Drifblim has something to go for here that is worthwhile, that's just kind of passive. We'll see what they do. Bastrodon goes for Terra Psychic immediately and does set up an Iron Defense. and takes that body press from Bronzong very nicely. So the Psychic Terra type, of course, still resisting Expanding Force from the Indeedee, but then also resisting the body press from Bronzong. Really good bring from the Chatots here. That's the fun of Draft League, right? Some of these creative Terra types and creative sets of other kinds can be very valuable in a particular matchup if you get your call just right, and I do really like the Terra Psychic Bastardon here. Drifblim takes the Expanding Force pretty well, actually, goes for Calm Mind, so it's going to take it even better from here, and it's immune to the body press from the Bronzong. Drifblim now protects, gets safely through another turn of terrain. Bastardon body press doesn't quite KO Bronzong, but there's not much damage coming back from the other side. And now Bronzong... Oh, okay, we see a double switch from the Houndstones, but they go to their two fast Pokemon, Flamigo and Salazzle, on the second last turn of Trick Room. So they're going to have to get through whatever is thrown at them this turn, and then probably protect through the last turn of their own Trick Room, and we'll see what exactly they're going for here. Flamigo does survive a body press, narrowly, but Salazzle survives a Psychic from Drifblim as well. That's a +1 Psychic, but Drifblim's offensive stats are not especially strong. This Drifblim has, obviously the Unburden is invisible, but it has boosts to all 4 of its relevant stats now, so that's a cool attack with the Grassy Seed and the Calm Mind. But yeah, still not hitting especially hard. I mean, Salazzle did take a lot of damage there, but... And when the Trick Room expires, again, Drifblim should be the fastest Pokemon here, so the Chatots are actually pretty nicely positioned to take advantage of however the speed control game shakes out. We see Fake Out into Bastardon, but the Psychic Terrain is still up. I don't blame them for this. I get fooled all the time by Showdown visuals because, of course, you set Terrain on Showdown, you have that visual in the background, as you do on the cartridge, but it's more obvious on Showdown. But unlike on the cartridge, when something like Trick Room is then set up, that overrides the Terrain visual. If this were played in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the Terrain effect on the ground would still be here. Showdown, you set Trick Room after, you just get the Trick Room background. I'm not trying to make a huge thing of it, demand that Showdown make change or something, but honestly, it does annoy me a little bit because I fall for that sometimes too. What can you do, I guess? Skill issue, maybe, for me. But anyway, no Fake Out. Body Press knocks out Flamigo. Drifblim knocks out Salazzle with a Psychic. And now the Trick Room ends, and it's the slow Pokemon left on the Houndstone side. They didn't protect through that last turn like I thought they would. Bronzong is not safe to set up another Trick Room. Indeedee takes like nothing from that Psychic, but the Expanding Force back isn't doing enough damage. Bronzong does knock out the Drifblim with Heavy Slam, but it drops to a Body Press from Bastardon. Of course, Bronzong had no opportunity to set Trick Room there because Trick Room has the lowest priority in the game, so Bastardon's attack would have come out first, but also Bastardon is both the most threatening Pokemon on the field and the slowest. So for all the flexible speed control options that the Houndstones brought to this game, that Iron Defense Terra Psychic Bastardon really effectively turned it around on them and took advantage of everything they tried to bring here. Fake Out crit, that'll help the Indeedee drop a little bit more quickly, maybe. I don't know if it mattered, but yeah, the Bastardon had that one sewn up, and it really just ran away with this whole game. So we'll see what the Houndstones come up with for that in Game 2. Maybe the... Excuse me. Honestly, if the Vivillon has Pollen Puff, that might be one of their better threats into Bastardon after it terrestrializes. Obviously, Piloswine is an offensive threat before Terra, but I don't know that it has especially good coverage into Bastardon after Terra, and of course, its damage is weakened by Iron Defense. Maybe the Salazzle can do something if it's positioned right as well, but of course in this game it was kind of just thrown out there in Trick Room, and while the Fake Out in Psychic Terrain is unfortunate, but it didn't get a ton of opportunity to do anything anyway. I mean, maybe there's something it could have done, but I do wonder whether we'll see the Vivillon in Game 2. Let's find out. Thwacky and Floatzel this time, okay, against Flamigo and Salazzle. Houndstones look like they're abandoning the Trick Room mode, as we see that Vivillon is the third Pokemon, so they brought all their fastest options. I wouldn't be surprised if Indeedee is last, maybe Piloswine, but it makes sense because the Trick Room was pretty effectively used against them by that Bastardon in Game 1. Anyway, Salazzle will get to land a Fake Out here into Floatzel, and it just gets chipped a little bit by a Grassy Glide. Vivillon switches in, not a ton happening turn 1. We see it protect from the Salazzle. It stops that Wave Crash nicely, and Vivillon just starts setting up with Quiver Dance. It does get knocked off by Thwacky, and we see that's Life Orb Vivillon. So yeah, probably is carrying a Bug Stab that would be able to threaten the Terra Psychic Bastrodon, but the Chatots seem to have pivoted away from the Bastrodon, at least in the lead position in Game 2. But we'll see what kind of threat Vivillon still can be with a Quiver Dance setup. I think it gets Giga Drain, so it could still get some HP back from this Floatzel. I don't know that Thwacky is necessarily much of a threat to it. Now that its item is removed and knockoff's damage will be weakened, but we'll see. Okay, the Flamigo switching in. Terra Grass on the Vivillon, and there is the Giga Drain. One-shots Floatzel, gets Vivillon back to full. Of course, turning off its flying typing means that Vivillon now has access not only to Grassy Terrain Recovery, but I believe also the damage boost to its Giga Drain, as well as the boost from Terra. So even at +1, it really looks like a threat here. We see Comfey come in for the Chatots. Flamigo protecting around a Draining Kiss, but the Vivillon was the real threat here, as Hurricane does good damage to Comfey and also confuses it. Vivillon does take a fair bit from a U-turn after Terastallizing. And we do see Bastrodon is the last Pokemon for the Chatots. It goes Terra Psychic immediately. Comfey drops to a Hurricane. Vivillon may be a little bit lucky landing its Hurricanes, but remember, it does get Compound Eyes, so that is a more accurate Hurricane than most Pokemon have available to them, though it's not 100. Flamigo goes straight for a close combat into Bastrodon. The Terra Psychic does nicely shut that down again. Body Press does a lot of damage to Vivillon, but it doesn't quite KO. And now we'll see if there's a... well, okay, Thwacky comes back in. If Vivillon has Protect, it might want to cover for a Fake Out. It switches out instead. We've seen Quiver Dance, Giga Drain, and Hurricane. I wouldn't be surprised if the last move is Pollen Puff. And then maybe you want to position that against Bastrodon. We do see that Piloswine is the last Pokemon here. Takes that Fake Out pretty nicely. Big U-turn from Flamigo. Chips the Bastrodon pretty nicely. Gets Salazzle back in. Piloswine takes a Body Press pretty well. Probably carrying that Eviolite. And another Protect from the Houndstones. They're positioning really carefully around the Chatots' offensive threats this game, and it's working pretty consistently. We see a fast Encore come out from the Salazzle into Thwacky. Thwacky's now locked into Fake Out. I guess if Thwacky... Yeah, Thwacky could have gone for Grassy Glide there. Would rather be locked into that, but it went for, I don't know what, not Grassy Glide. So it's kind of stuck now. We do see Bastrodon set up with an Iron Defense. Bastrodon might still be able to be a win con in the game. I am anticipating that Vivillon probably has a Bug-type attack in its last slot. I keep saying Pollen Puff. It could be Bug Buzz on an offensive set like this. That might be more likely. But Vivillon is now unboosted, so it's not just going to come in and delete Bastrodon, I'm pretty sure. Bastrodon is an extremely bulky Pokemon. So the Houndstones still need to be looking for damage into Bastrodon where they can get it. Of course, Thwacky being unable to switch out and locked into Fake Out ought to help a lot with that. It's not a Pokemon they really need to worry about, so we'll probably see them pressure the Bastrodon heavily from here. We see Sludge Bomb into Bastrodon. That does good damage. Piloswine starts setting up with Curse. Still doesn't take that Body Press super well. And Bastrodon is getting a lot of recovery from the terrain and its leftovers. But the Houndstones take the opportunity to knock out Thwacky here, I guess, before the Encore ends. And High Horsepower will chip Bastrodon, and Bastrodon does knock out Piloswine, but it's hard to imagine that it beats the other three Pokemon, especially with the Vivillon still in the back. Here it is. Sludge Bomb, yeah, pretty good damage, and there's the Pollen Puff after all. Bastrodon does drop the Terra Psychic that put in so much work in Game 1. Does turn into a bit of a liability here in Game 2, but the Bastrodon was kind of pinned because there was still the Flamigo as well. And of course, Flamigo already threw a close combat into it, so it needed the Terra Psychic to deal with that, but that did leave it vulnerable to Vivillon and Salazzle. So we did see the Vivillon adjustment in Game 2, and it was a more offensive set than I was anticipating. We'll see what the Chatots have for that in Game 3. Let's jump right in. Thwacky leading with Drifblim against Vivillon and Salazzle. So the Houndstone's trying to keep up the pressure. Of course, I say keeping up the pressure. We see the Indeedee switch in here. The Houndstones in Game 2 did a lot of protecting around the Chatots' threats and pivoting around and positioning carefully, and it paid off nicely. But you could, if you're the Chatots coach, maybe read some of those plays in Game 3, now that you've seen a lot of how they work in Game 2, and it could be a tougher positioning battle for the Houndstones. We'll see. But Indeedee comes in, changes the terrain, stops the Fake Out. Drifblim goes straight for Calm Mind. That setup Drifblim was pretty effective in Game 1. Thwacky just drops immediately to a Sludge Bomb, so there will be no grassy terrain for the rest of this game. Bastrodon comes in. The Chatots look like they've gone back to something resembling the Game 1 game plan. In fact, it's the same lead as Game 1, I think. So maybe the same game plan that they had in Game 1, but we do see the Vivillon is there on the other side this time, and that could make a real difference. Salazzle takes a lot from a Psychic, but it's not KO'd, but it goes for Encore. Excuse me. Maybe hoping to lock Drifblim into Calm Mind. Instead, it's locked into Psychic, and I don't think Drifblim minds that too much. I think it appreciates being able to do some damage here, even if it won't be a lot of damage into Indeedee. Expanding Force is just not doing a ton back. Bastrodon gets it set up very nicely, and Salazzle does drop to a Psychic here. So Salazzle played a significant role in Game 2. I do talk up the Vivillon as an offensive threat to Bastrodon, but again, Bastrodon is very bulky. Salazzle chipping it quite a lot before Vivillon came in at the end of Game 2 made a real difference there, I think. So losing Salazzle here is not great for the Houndstones. Of course, this Salazzle, we know that it has Fake Out, Encore, Sludge Bomb. Can't remember whether we know its last move. Maybe it's Protect. If we saw that, I don't remember. But it's not pressuring the Bastrodon before Terra, but they haven't forced the Bastrodon to Terra, and they've lost Salazzle already. So the Vivillon has an uphill battle the rest of the way, especially if they don't have Flamigo or Piloswine to force Bastrodon to Terra, but I think they probably do have one of those. Anyway, Body Press just knocks out Indeedee at +2. Okay. Big damage for sure. And it is Flamigo in the back along with Vivillon, but we'll see how the Chatots play around this. They do just Terra the Bastrodon immediately. They laid a big Psychic into Flamigo. It almost one-shots, but not quite. And Vivillon is setting up the Quiver Dance, but that might be too little too late, as we see a Brave Bird into Drifblim. Doesn't KO, does knock out the Flamigo with Recoil. It's actually almost... I mean, I think if you're the Chatots, you're worried about the close combat into Bastrodon. I know I would be, but honestly, Terastallizing here is almost disadvantageous, the way that turn actually played out, because the Flamigo never got a chance to damage Bastrodon. And now Vivillon, it does have that super effective +1 Pollen Puff, but it's stuck on an island here. All of its teammates are already gone somehow. Well, the setup, Drifblim and Bastrodon just kind of ripped through them. There was a good denial of grassy terrain early in the game, but they just didn't stop either of the setup Pokemon. Bastrodon now gets to +4. And yeah, it takes a lot from Pollen Puff, but it's not a KO. Vivillon still has its Life Orb this time, so it's going to be worn down even more quickly. It does get through this turn. It can probably knock something out now. We see Terra Grass. We see Giga Drain into Bastrodon. Goes for recovery, but misses the KO. And Bastrodon will close this one out with a Body Press. Really nice Bastrodon gameplay from these Urbe Chatots all the way through. Of course, if it went down here, they still have their 4th Pokemon in the back. I don't think we saw what that was. I don't think Vivillon breaks through that and Drifblim in the end game, but it is nice that Bastrodon gets this final KO after this Terra Psychic set put in so much work, especially in Game 1, but also here in Game 3. And yeah, the Drifblim made a real difference here. I thought just setting up with Calm Mind and clicking Psychic to remove the Salazzle and Flamigo quickly so that they couldn't pressure Bastrodon like they did in Game 2. So good adjustments from both sides, but the Chatots take this one in the end. Up next, we have the Big Mode Bellibolt taking on the Alberta Applin. The Applin, of course, have that really interesting hard Sun team. There's no Vulpix this time, but they do still have multiple fire types, and Tropius able to potentially click Sunny Day, but the most likely one, of course, is Volbeat, because it has that Prankster. It can give Sunny Day and Tailwind support to its teammates. They have Redirection with the Magby. They have strong Sun offense from Tropius, which could be using Chlorophyll or Solar Power, or even some kind of Harvest setup stuff, but that seems less likely. And of course, the Quilava can carry a Choice Scarf or Specs, even if it wants, with Tailwind support, and it can click Eruption, or it could carry a different item, but those are some options to make up for the lost power of being a Quilava. And we've seen the Flareon. The Flareon has been interesting throughout the season so far, right? We've seen them run it with a Flame Orb, which means they have to Terastallize to actually get the burn and get their Guts boost. But clicking Terra normal aggressively and going for Stab boosted Facade has really not been the worst thing for this team. But of course, I'm bearing the lead. The Applin is here. I don't know what the Applin is here to do. Applin is not a Pokemon that can do very much, but we'll hopefully find out. On the Bellibolt side, we do not see the Bellibolt this week. I was just going to reflexively say we see that scary duo of Oranguru or Bellibolt and Bellibolt, but there is no Bellibolt. There is the Victory Bell and the Houndoom, so that makes sense to take advantage of the opponent's Sun if they go for a Sun game plan. Victory Bell gets Chlorophyll, Houndoom gets boosted fire attacks, and it gets Flash Fire. So it doesn't have to worry about something like an Eruption from Quilava or a Flare Blitz from Flareon. We also see the Orthworm. The Orthworm is in some danger against all these fire types, but maybe it can set something up against not Volbeat so much because that could carry Onkar. I don't know what the Orthworm is here for in this matchup, but maybe it's to cover for something else beyond the fire spam. I don't remember every Pokemon that the Applin have. And Cramorant is here. Oh, and they have Fletchling for Priority Tailwind. That's probably what that does. Add Chlorophyll on Victory Bell. You have some pretty good speed control here. They have Cramorant. I'm always hoping to see a Gulp Missile KO when we see the Cramorant. We got one in week 1. Let's hopefully keep that going. But obviously, as a water and flying type, Cramorant just has great offensive coverage into most of the Applin roster. So why not bring it? All right, we see Fletchling leading with Houndoom against Volbeat and Quilava. Houndoom goes Terra Rock immediately. Interesting. Both sides set Tailwind, and it's just Rock Terra Blast into Quilava. I don't know what the Quilava was going to do here. Obviously, you can't safely click Eruption into Houndoom, but we don't get to find out as... Also, I don't know whether it's Scarf Quilava. It could be Scarf Houndoom to outspeed that still, but it could also not be. I don't have the information right now. Hopefully, we'll find out as the set goes on. But of course, Rock Terra Blast is super safe into this team because they have a bunch of fire types. They have their most important support Pokemon is a bug type. They have the flying type in Tropius. Literally 5 out of 6 Pokemon that the Applin brought this week are weak to Rock, and they have no resist, and the only one that's neutral is Applin. So if this is Scarf, Terra, Rock, Blast, Houndoom with Flash Fire, yeah, that's... I don't know how they beat that. We'll find out if they find a way. Okay. If I just watched a little bit longer, I would know that it has a Life Orb, but not a Scarf. That also confirms not Scarf Quilava. But this is the danger of pausing to talk before you see the whole turn, I guess. We do see the Applin come in, so hey, that is the only thing that's not weak to Rock on this team. Maybe it'll get a chance to do something. But Fletchling just goes for Brave Bird into the Applin. That does, of course, still have priority because Gale Wings is still active, but we know already that Fletchling is the fastest Pokemon on the field anyway. Probably. Volbeat actually has a higher base speed, but Fletchling did go first turn 1. So at worst, they're speed tying, but my guess is it's fast Fletchling and not so fast Volbeat. We don't get to find out what the Applin does here, as it does just drop to that priority Brave Bird, and there doesn't seem to be anything to stop the Rock Terra Blast now. It doesn't one-shot the Volbeat, so Volbeat will get a chance to click Struggle Bug. Okay, that will weaken Houndoom's damage. As we see Flareon as the last Pokemon. It goes Terra Steel. Okay, that is a Rock Resist. If it has Flash Fire, it still also can't be beaten with Fire-type attacks, but my guess is that it has Guts instead. And it protects. I think it's getting a Flame Orb here. Volbeat does drop to a Brave Bird. So Flareon is left alone against 4 Pokemon. We do see the Flame Orb, so that's almost certainly Guts Flareon. It's definitely Guts Flareon. Facade would still be boosted even without, but it's not even Terra Normal. There's no way you... And also you want good damage from your other attacks. So Guts confirmed. That means it can be cooked by fire attacks after it turns into a steel type. Houndoom instead goes for Dark Pulse. Fletchling goes for Feather Dance. That's a really cool tech. Fletchling faster than Flareon. Similar base speed. Flareon's is higher, but yeah, this is, I think we know, a fast Fletchling. And Flareon could easily just be Adamant or something. But Feather Dance is a great tech to weaken the damage from that Flareon. Of course, it gets so many multipliers with Guts and potentially Facade, but... Quick, -2 attack. Flareon was already not likely to sweep 4 opposing Pokemon, but yeah, it's hard to see how it can do that now. Facade still does quite a bit to Houndoom, so yeah, that's how strong Flareon is with all these boosts, but those Feather Dances are going to add up quickly. Now it's at -4 attack. Houndoom protecting through another Facade, and of course Flareon taking Burn Chip as well. And we see the Dark Pulse not quite KO, but the Burn Chip will, but actually the Brave Bird will first, so Fletchling gets on the board with a KO. Very nice for that Pokemon. Let's go to game 2. That Terra Rock Houndoom looks like an absolute menace. If you're the Applin, maybe you bring Tropius and try to get going with Chlorophyll and be an offensive threat after pressuring out the Terra from Houndoom. Although even at the point where you've gotten Houndoom to Terastallize, you're in a lot of danger, right? Because it's probably knocking something out on your side before that. Maybe we see the Magby this game as well. Let's find out. It is Fletchling and Cramorant lead this time. Okay, never mind the Houndoom for now. Maybe it's lurking in the back. And we do actually see Magby and Tropius lead. So, okay. I could see something like Follow Me, Sunny Day. Tropius trying to turn into an offensive threat into Houndoom. Maybe hoping to pressure out the Terra so that Houndoom has good damage into Magby, although we already know that it has Dark Pulse, and it's not like Magby is a super bulky Pokemon. Also, I'm not sure whether Magby has the Eviolite this week. It could be on Applin. But instead we get Cramorant, so we'll see how they adjust to that. Magby actually just switches right out to Flareon. Fletchling sets Tailwind. Cramorant goes for Dive. We see the Gulp Missile activate, and Tropius does not click Sunny Day. It goes straight for a Dragon Dance. That's another way to make itself faster, and it'll also get a power boost out of that, so I do like it. And we know that Cramorant is using Dive, so that's not much of a threat to Tropius. On the other hand, there's nothing to stop Fletchling from clicking Brave Bird this next turn, so maybe we'll see what Terra type the Tropius has here. Nope, it's Flareon going for Terra Steel. This, again, has been a little bit of a recurring issue for the Applin, that because they run Flame Orb on the Flareon, it has to Terastallize to activate Guts. That does put a lot of pressure on their one Terra slot, and so I think this Tropius is probably going to be very vulnerable to Brave Bird now. Maybe it protects, we'll find out in a second. But, of course, Flareon could run a Toxic Orb, and then it could be poisoned without having to Terastallize, and it could get its Guts more reliably. The only problem with the Toxic Orb is that it inflicts the quote-unquote bad poison, like the move Toxic. So it starts off doing, I think, less damage than a burn. Maybe it's the same. It's definitely less damage than regular poison, but the damage increases each turn. So I know that's why the Applin have been hesitant to bring the Toxic Orb on Flareon, but bringing the Flame Orb really does kind of make them stuck in terms of some of their game plans. Let's see if the Tropius protects here. It does not. Dive is stopped by the Flareon's Protect. And Fletchling actually showing Flare Blitz. Of course, Fletchling not a fire type, unlike its evolved form. So Brave Bird would have done more into Tropius, but maybe Bellibolt were anticipating a Terra there. Tropius still takes a lot of damage, but Fletchling will no longer have a priority attack because it has broken its own Gale Wings here, and Tropius does get a second Dragon Dance. It probably still slower than Fletchling when only the Fletchling side is Tailwind, but we'll see. I think that Tropius is in danger. It actually drops the Cramorant's Brave Bird. Cramorant faster than Fletchling, yeah. So the Applin, I said that I thought the Tropius Magby lead made sense as an adjustment to what they saw in Game 1, but not bringing the Volbeat, at least in the lead position. We'll see whether they brought it at all. Left them very vulnerable here because the other side got Tailwind and they didn't, and even after the Tropius invested 2 whole turns to click Dragon Dance, it still was slower than Cramorant, probably still slower than Fletchling, and it just got knocked out before it got to do anything. I think Chlorophyll Tropius with Sunny Day, I mean, actually the speed would have worked out to be the same thing, wouldn't it? I guess the Tropius was always just kind of hard pressed here. Maybe if it had clicked Dragon Dance and something else had clicked Sunny Day. But yeah, it just never got to a position in this game where it had the opportunity to do any damage, and so there it goes. We see the Feather Dance into Flareon again. And there's the Sunny Day, but it's too late to help Tropius. Maybe it'll help some teammates. But Flareon already at -2 attack, slower than this Fletchling and Tailwind. Do we see the Volbeat? Nope, it's Quilava, so only the Bellibolts are getting Tailwind this game. This is the last turn. So if Fletchling goes down here, they don't have the Tailwind anymore, but they will get another Feather Dance into Flareon. Magby is still available in the back, so Flareon can switch out, but for now at least it's at -4 attack. Cramorant going for Dive. It obviously is Water-type damage. It also activates Gulp Missile. It also kills a turn of Sun. And we see a big Eruption from the Quilava. That'll knock out Fletchling, so no more Tailwind this game. This would be a good time to have the Tropius available. Unfortunately, it did go down during the Tailwind turns. Cramorant nicely avoiding that Facade that's now at -4 anyway. We see Victory Bell come in. So perfectly timed on the Bellibolt side. The Victory Bell finally hitting the field just as the opponent has gotten the Sun set up. Of course, Victory Bell is very offensively pressured by these two fire types. But we haven't seen a Terra yet from the Bellibolt, and Victreebel just protects through this turn. Quilava protects as well, and it does actually stop the dive. But Flareon doesn't get any damage with that Flare Blitz into a protect. We see Magby switch back in, and it is Terra Water Victreebel. We see Water Terra Blast into Quilava. That's an interesting tech when, of course, the opponent has a Sun team, so the Water type damage will be weakened. I am a little bit curious as to why it's not Terra Rock like the Houndoom was, but maybe they just didn't want to double up on too much of the same thing. They wanted some variety in the way that they can attack this team to cover for different scenarios. That makes a lot of sense if that's what it is. Rock is a massively threatening offensive Terra type into this team, but if the Houndoom has that covered already, I mean, I guess why not Terra Water Victreebel? It's not like they're threatening a lot of damage to knock it out here. It'll get to Terra Blast again after this. Yeah, Eruption, not going to do much to these two water types. And it's not a Gulp Missile KO, but Quilava does take some damage back from that Gulp Missile. Quilava is in rough shape now. We see that it has a white herb. Huh. Why does it have a white herb? What's that for? Bulldoze, maybe? That's the best I've got. It turns off the defense drop from Gulp Missile, but I don't think that's what they were worried about in the builder. Wait, hold on. Wait, this is ringing a bell. No, I know this one. They talked about this in the Discord. It just was so long ago because I'm recording this later than usual. An earlier version of the Quilava set had Overheat. The white herb was to get rid of the Overheat drop, and then when they changed the set, they forgot to change the item, which happens sometimes. I've done that. Who hasn't, if you played enough? That's why the Quilava has white herb. I do actually know the answer to that. Anyway, it drops to a Throat Chop here. And that leaves Flareon and Magby. Flareon gets a helping hand from Magby, but we see another way to reduce Flareon's attack from the Bellibolt. Smart team building identified the Flareon as one of the biggest threats on the other side, and identified that it wasn't really in a position where it could carry a clear amulet or something like that. So we saw the Feather Dance already, now we see the Strength Sap. Cramorant going for a dive. Victreebel actually still drops to Facade. That Flareon is just really strong. The Flareon is just so strong. Maybe the Strength Sap wasn't as cool a play as I thought it was. But Sun is gone now, so that dive is going to be pretty threatening. And we see Houndoom is the last Pokemon for the Bellibolt. Magby will redirect the attacks into itself here. Does Flareon knock out Cramorant? No, it goes for Houndoom. If the Houndoom has a fire attack, then Flareon is in danger from that because it's a steel type. So I guess both these Pokemon were threatening to Flareon. I can understand thinking that the Houndoom is the greater threat and that's what you need to remove here. I think that makes sense, but we'll see if Flareon can complete the comeback against Cramorant here. Facade into a Protect to get a little bit of burn chip. Cramorant going for another dive. And we'll see what kind of damage this does. None, because Flareon protects. But, again, Flareon is getting worn down over time by that burn, so it can't really afford to be playing out these passive turns like this. But the way Cramorant is alternating Protect and Dive, Flareon really doesn't have much choice. So Cramorant being faster would seem to just seal it for the Bellibolt here, but we'll see if anything surprising happens. Maybe they misclick. The Flareon is just getting worn down. And Cramorant, once it has KO range, goes for the Brave Bird and finishes the Flareon off. That's some good Brave Bird damage into a resistance. Cramorant might be stronger than I thought. But yeah, no Gulp Missile KO, but it did. The Cramorant certainly put in work here, putting that Flareon in as far as I could tell, an unwinnable endgame. So maybe you did just have to take your chances with the Houndoom if you're the Applin, but Cramorant and Houndoom were both just so threatening into this team. It was really hard to overcome, and they did not find a way in the end. Up next, we have the Ontario Minccinos taking on Drago's Children. The Minccinos coach has been talking in the Discord about trying to hold on to first place in the league. Of course, going into Week 3, they were tied with the Winchester Walreins at perfect undefeated record, 2-0 with 0 game losses. The Walreins, we know, kept that up with a 2-0 win against, unfortunately, me this week. So let's see if the Minccinos can still keep pace. They have brought the Politoed and Gothorita Perish Trap option, the Trick Room, Rain, Clawitzer offensive option, redirection from the Furret. scary Trick Room setter and also offensive Pokemon in the Mimikyu that's hard to break through because of the disguise, and of course the Incineroar-esque support kit with the Torracat. All the things we're used to seeing from the Minccinos so far this season. On the Dragos children's side, looks like they have their own Trick Room mode with Dusclops, Galarian Slowbro. What's the attacker? It might be Slowbro itself. It might be Kleavor. I mean, it doesn't look like they have a fast mode, so maybe it's like, it could even be like room service Kleavor or something. They have Poltergeist. That's what that Pokemon is called. Yep, they have Poltergeist here to help keep everyone healthy. They have Klefki. I wouldn't be surprised to see screen support with that. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Sunny Day Klefki. At least I think it gets that move to disrupt the opponent's rain. And I don't necessarily know what the Applin is here for. Maybe to just help make sure Stone Axe connects. But yeah, it looks like there's not a ton of offense here except from the Kleavor and maybe the Slowbro. So there's probably some kind of specific Trick Room game plan here from Dragos Children, but we'll find out. Klefki leading with Kleavor against Gothorita and Politoed. Kleavor just protecting against this potential water type damage as Klefki sets Light Screen. Politoed goes straight for the Perish Song though. So we see the Perish Trap immediately. Not afraid of this Kleavor, I guess. We see... Oh, that's a really cool tech. Klefki going for Switcheroo. Of course, so it's a really cool tech for game 1. It'll be hard to pull off in later games because, of course, this only works because the Klefki was not attacked turn 1. But I think you could reasonably anticipate that it wouldn't be attacked turn 1, but it could have interesting implications for the rest of the set. Klefki, so eject button, when the Pokemon is hit by an attack, the item is consumed and the Pokemon is forcibly switched out. That's why this doesn't work if Klefki is attacked turn 1, because not only is Klefki switched out, but the eject button also is gone for the rest of the game. But what they've done here is they've broken the Perish Trap. Gothorita wants to sit on the field with Shadow Tag so that the other Pokemon can, the opposing Pokemon can never switch out, and eventually they'll drop to Perish Song. But if you force Gothorita to switch out, then guaranteed you're able to switch out next turn. We do see that Stone Axe. Of course, Politoed is still here. It could just click a Water-type Weather Ball into Kleavor right now, and then Kleavor still goes down more quickly than it would under Perish Song. But that Switcheroo eject button play is really cool. Whether it works out for them or not, I really like it. It actually sends me a little bit back to Sword and Shield when people would use that to counter Dynamax, because Dynamax was, of course, the generational super transformation of Sword and Shield, and it would turn a Pokemon into this big, mighty super form for 3 turns, but if they switched out, then the Dynamax was gone forever. And eject button did work on Dynamax Pokemon, so people would use the same kind of tech then to shut down the opponent's Dynamax within like 0 to 1 turns. If you could predict when they would Dynamax, it was extremely powerful. It's really cool to see that come back to shut down a Perish Trap here. But let's see if Kleavor drops to a water attack now. It does have Light Screen up. But yeah, it's still just one shot by that Weather Ball. Okay, we see Applin come in. It's still a cool play, even with that result, but I do wonder what kind of damage they have now with Kleavor gone. Also, the other side has a lot of damage with Clawitzer on the board here. We see Applin, we see the Super Sweet Syrup, we see Dusclops come in with Frisk. It is Leftovers, Politoed, not surprising when a team like this. Choice Specs, Clawitzer, that's going to be a menace. But maybe the Applin can help answer it. Of course, Clawitzer does get Dragon Pulse, and it could have a creative Terror type. You probably don't want to lock into Dragon Pulse when there's a Klefki on the other side, but we'll find out. We see Terra Steel, it does just lock into Dragon Pulse. It almost one-shots Applin, but not quite. But Weather Ball finishes the job. And it's just Klefki and Dusclops left on the other side. There's probably not much damage there. Maybe like Nightshade from Dusclops. But we see the Gothorita switch in. Does take Stealth Rock damage because of the Stone Axe earlier. Dragon Pulse is not doing a ton to Dusclops. So not exactly big damage on either side here, but I think you're pretty comfy with your position if you're the Minccinos. We see Klefki steal the choice specs from Clawitzer and give it a useless Eviolite, so Clawitzer's damage will be reduced, but it also is now able to do damage to Klefki without switching out, so kind of a mixed bag there. Klefki gets taunted by the Gothorita, the rain is gone, but the Politoed will come in and set it right back up. Clawitzer can now click Water Pulse or something into Klefki if it wants, but it just keeps going for the Dragon Pulse into Dusclops. Honestly, why not click Water Pulse into that at this point? Maybe they forgot that they're not choice locked. Who knows? It happens. But Politoed and Clawitzer have so much more damage now than the other side. There finally is the Water Pulse. It knocks out the Dusclops. Clawitzer, of course, gets Mega Launcher, so certain Pulse esque moves that it uses get boosted damage. That's why it runs Water Pulse. It is much stronger used by Clawitzer than almost anything else. And we see big damage into the Klefki. We see Draining Kiss do not big damage into the Clawitzer. And yeah, this water type offense is just breaking this team down. I did say at preview that it kind of seemed like a lot of their damage came from the Kleavor, and maybe the Galarian Slowbro was the rest of it. Applin tried here, and I wasn't sure whether the Minccinos would dare lock into Dragon Pulse with the Klefki in the back, but yeah, they did just do that, and that was it for Applin. And of course, there's only one Eviolite available. I think it's on the Dusclops. We saw that take a lot of hits, so that's going to affect the Applin's bulk as well. But yeah, Kleavor made that one very cool play turn 1, but then it did just fold under this water type offense, and there was not enough damage on the Drago's Children's side to make up for it. So I don't know what the adjustment is in game 2. We'll see if they find it. I would expect to see the Galarian Slowbro get involved in this game, but who knows what kind of set it has. We see Klefki leading with Kleavor again against Politoed and Gothorita, so same leads, I think. But Kleavor goes for Terra Grass this time. Stone Axe into Politoed. Takes the Weather Ball reasonably well in Light Screen. And Gothorita taunts the Klefki, so there will be no... If they want to set up the Perish Trap now, there will be no Switcheroo eject button play. But on the other hand, they'll probably have to sack Politoed to pull that off if they want to. Actually, Kleavor's faster than Politoed, so they just can't reliably set the Perish Trap right now. But, I mean, taunting the Klefki is useful in other ways as well. Gothorita switches out to Torracat. That'll get an Intimidate into Kleavor. Nope, it has a Clear Amulet. Politoed protects. Kleavor goes for an X-Scissor to Torracat. That probably would have just knocked out the Gothitelle the way that... Well, I think Gothitelle probably is the Eviolite on this team, and I don't know my calcs. But that did a lot to Torracat. Or a resisted attack. We see Klefki switch out to Dusclops here. That'll get rid of the taunt. Heavy duty boots on the Torracat. That's a funny thing to see in a VGC format, but of course it does make perfect sense when the opponent has a strong attack that happens to also set up Stealth Rock. And your support pivoting fire type. We see Flare Blitz into Kleavor and Ice Beam. A very threatening double up, but stopped by the Protect. Parting Shot into Kleavor, of course, is going to be stopped by the Clear Amulet. The Minccinos may be anticipating a switch there. But Torracat is stuck on the field and drops to a Stone Axe. We'll see how Kleavor takes this Ice Beam. Not super well, but it survives. Trick Room now is up. Kleavor is still here. Gothorita comes in and just immediately switches out to Clawitzer. What is that for? I don't know. Clawitzer takes a Shadow Sneak. Kleavor drops to an Ice Beam. Politoed, slower than Kleavor. We knew that already. So the Trick Room is looking counterproductive for Drago's Children so far, but maybe they're setting up for something in the back. They did just kind of deny Kleavor a chance to do any further damage, though, as, yeah, we do have multiple turns showing us that the Politoed is slower, and we already saw the Ice Beam. So I don't know what they're setting up for. Maybe something with this Applin. It's probably going to be slower than these two. It's threatening them with maybe Grass Stab. Although Applin, how hard does Applin hit? I'm not sure. Dusclops pivots out to Klefki. Politoed protects around a Leaf Storm. Okay. But Applin, I was going to say we know it takes a lot from the Dragon Pulse. It actually does just get knocked out this time. Oh, there's no Light Screen this time. And once again, I'm wondering where the damage is, as we know that they still did not bring the Galarian Slowbro. So its set is still a complete mystery. I don't know what moves it has. I don't know whether it really was another damage option the way they brought it this week. We just have no way to know. It never came to a game. But I think once again, Dusclops and Klefki are going to be hard-pressed to break through these two water types. In any case, we do see the Perish Song against the last two Pokemon here. So Applin... I imagine the Trick Room was for Applin because, again, it actually only hurt Kleavor, but we don't really get a chance to see Applin put in work as its only attack is stopped by Protect, but also Clawitzer with the Terra Steel, probably making Applin's life hard anyway, especially when the Terra was already used on the other side. Hard to imagine Applin breaking through. but maybe Cleavor wasn't really in a position where it could break through either. And what I said at preview about not being sure that Drago's children had enough damage, you know, often coaches bring really creative prep and prove me wrong when I say that kind of thing, but that did end up being an issue this time. And the Ontario Minccinos do take the 2-0 win, and we continue as of the end of week 3 to have 2 different teams in this league that have not lost a single game yet, still fighting hard for first place. And I don't know whether they play each other in the regular season. I don't remember. Actually, I don't think I checked in the first place. But of course, we're not at the end of week 3 yet. We still have 3 more sets to get through, I think. Here we have the Southern-style Grovyles taking on the Tiny Crowns. The Grovyles bringing that Calyrex Size Spam option that I've been interested in seeing all season, but they might have trouble dealing with the Alolan Persian and even the Chimecho on the other side. Chimecho, I think, gets imprisoned. I don't know whether it gets Expanding Force. It would be funny if it's an Expanding Force Imprisoned set, but I'm sure it has some ways to disrupt Calyrex Size Spam, and Persian certainly does with its Dark typing and Snarl. We see the Dragalge from the Grovyles. That's just a really good Pokemon in this format. It's an offensive threat into a lot of the opposing team. It is, of course, weak to the Ground Stab from the Sandslash, so Sandslash could prove to be a very good bring from the other Crowns, but Dragalge very threatening into the likes of Lilligant, Golduck, relatively threatening into Alolan Persian because it can carry those special attacks. We see the duo of Brionne and I was going to say Gothorita, and then I was going to say Gardevoir. I keep going through G Pokemon here, but of course it is Grovyle. Grovyle could be running a Psychic Seed to get an Unburden boost in Psychic Terrain. It also could be running a Pledge combo with Brionne to set up the swamp and give speed control to strong but not super fast threats like Calyrex and Dragalge that way. I think that makes a lot of sense. We could see Scrafty carrying Intimidate. That could help to weaken the Hisui and Lilligant. It could also help to weaken the Sandslash and give Dragalge some cover against that Pokemon. So a lot of strong options for the Grovyles here. Going to be very interesting to see how this matchup plays out. But the Crowns, they have possible Tailwind with the Drifloon. It'll be really interesting if they have a Psychic Seed on that to take advantage of the opponent's Psychic Terrain. I could see Trick Room stuff. Nah, maybe not with this lineup from the Chimecho. But I could see the Chimecho being disruptive in some way. The Alolan Persian is going to be potentially pretty hard for the Grovyles to deal with because they don't have a ton of threats into that. And yeah, the Sandslash is a little bit of a wild card, but certainly the most obvious threat into Dragalge. So a lot of ways this can play out. Let's see what we get here. We see Brionne leading with Grovyle, so I think we will see the Swamp combo against Drifloon and Alolan Persian. Fake out into Brionne will stop the Water Pledge part of the combo. And oh, I did not know that interaction. That's really awkward. So of course the pledges are all 80 base power special attacks in their own right. I think it's 80. But if you use 2 of them in the same turn, then the first Pokemon does its action, and it just waits for the other Pokemon to do its action, and you get the one combined attack at the end using the speed of the first Pokemon and the special attack stat of the second Pokemon. What that means in this case, because Brionne flinched and didn't get to execute Water Pledge, but Water Pledge was definitely the move entered, is that we do not get the Grass Pledge attack. Grovyle just does the waiting action, but then the other part of it doesn't come, so there's no attack at all. Pretty unfortunate interaction there. Well, we're going to see a Snarl from the Persian here. They probably can just get the Swamp combo if they want, but it's going to do a bit less damage. But yeah, the Pledge combo does execute in turn 2 here. Yeah, it does like nothing to that Drifloon. Maybe that's an Eviolite Drifloon instead of Psychic Seed. That is definitely more consistent, unless you really, really want Unburden for some reason. But the Crowns will have to, so the Crowns will have to play in the Swamp for the next few turns. That's going to, even with Tailwind up, really badly nerf their speed control. The problem for the Grovyles is they don't have much damage on the board right now. These 2 Pokemon are not especially strong, and they've already taken a Snarl, and they're both running special attacks. And you can't really safely pivot Calyrex and Indeedee in on Persian if that's what you have in the back. You don't even really want to pivot Dragalge in probably on this Persian just clicking Snarl. Like, Persian can pretty safely click Snarl and cover for almost everything the Grovyles can do here, and maybe stall out the Swamp turns. The one Pokemon in the back that can mess with that is Scrafty, but only if they brought it, so we'll see. Drifloon just explodes, actually, and that almost knocks out Grovyle right there. That's actually a way that they could themselves have disrupted this cozy position that they have here, relatively speaking, for being in a swamp situation. We'll see if the Persian does next turn, but it actually might be best for them that they didn't knock out the Grovyle there. But we see Hisui and Lilligant come in. This is a Grass Pledge without a Water Pledge. Lilligant going for Victory Dance. Persian actually just U-turns out, and Grovyle drops to that. But Sandslash comes in. They're still in the swamp. The Lilligant is at +1 speed and in Tailwind, so I think it's still slower than baseline right now, but I don't know. All these multipliers. Who knows what's going on here? But yeah, all that pressure that I talked about from the Persian is now off the board. So there could still be an opening for the Grovyles to get some threats going while the swamp is still up. The Lilligant, of course, has boosted its attack and defense as well, so you do have to watch out for that Pokemon. But the Brionne shows a Moonblast. No stab, of course. Brionne is not a fairy type. That's only Primarina in that family. And it is still at -1 special attack. So it doesn't quite do half to Lilligant. It'll probably take more than 2 of those to knock it out, but it is some damage. And we do see the Scrafty now. Intimidate into Lilligant and Sandslash, very nice for the Grovyles. And given that we know Persian is the Pokemon in the back, Lilligant could still threaten Scrafty with its Fighting Stab. Maybe we'll see a Terra, I don't know, but Scrafty does look like very dangerous into this Crowns team, at least in Game 1. We see Leaf Blade into Brionne, it doesn't quite KO. And just a Drain Punch into Lilligant, that doesn't quite KO either. The Moonblast damage, not quite enough to set that up. Brionne does not double into the Lilligant. Instead, it lands a Water Pledge into Sandslash. That does pretty good damage. Sandslash is setting up with Hone Claws, but there's still another turn of Swamp after this one. So Sandslash, it might be just literally too slow with that setup. We'll see. Oh, okay. Protects through the Swamp. Fair enough. Lilligant still targeting the Brionne. It really does feel like the Scrafty is more dangerous here, but Lilligant probably just can't just one-shot it anyway. I mean, maybe if it has... What's a really strong fighting attack that Lilligant gets? It gets Close Combat. I think it gets, like, Axe Kick. I don't remember how that move works. But yeah, 2 turns in a row focusing on attacking the Brionne. I mean, Brionne is an offensive threat too, so I guess it's kind of lose-lose for the Crowns. Because if you focus down the Scrafty, then actually the Brionne has really strong coverage into all your Pokemon as well. But I don't know what beats the Scrafty at this point. And we see that Dragalge is the last Pokemon in the back, so no Psy Spam mode this game. Dragalge gets crit by a Stone Edge, still takes it reasonably well, and Persian just drops to a Drain Punch. And yeah, I don't see Sandslash closing this one out. Of course, it does have boosted accuracy with Home Claws, so those Stone Edges are going to more reliably hit. But still, I don't know why that's the move that it's going for into this Poison type here. But Dragalge takes another one, just barely, and in any case, Sandslash drops to a Drain Punch. So Scrafty, yeah, for all that I talked about there not being a lot of damage on the Grovyle side, and I do think there were maybe a little bit let off the hook by the way the Drifloon and Persian played out those early Swamp turns. The Scrafty was the real difference maker in the game. There wasn't... From what we saw, there wasn't a good answer to it on the Crown side. You'd think the Lilligant would have some kind of offensive coverage, but we never saw that because it focused on attacking the Brionne. And I do think that's actually kind of understandable because the Brionne had a lot of great coverage into this team as well. Both Pokemon were threats. But yeah, I don't know what adjustment the Crowns might have for the Scrafty. They're definitely going to need to find something because that Pokemon is really dangerous to them in this set, as it demonstrated in Game 1 there. I actually wouldn't have been surprised if the Calyrex and Indeedee had been left behind here in Game 2, but that's not what happens. We do see them lead against Persian and Lilligant. This is interesting, actually, because they pressure... I mean, the Persian is going to make their lives kind of difficult, but they do have a lot of pressure into the Lilligant immediately. They could force a Terra or force a Switch, and if they're able to just remove Lilligant or significantly weaken it, then that could be very good for Scrafty in the back, because I don't know what other threats the Crowns have in this Scrafty. Calyrex goes for the Stellar Terra immediately, so they just want damage here. Lilligant protects. We do see a Snarl. That is going to chip and weaken both these Pokemon. It might be cool if it were Clear Amulet Calyrex, or Covert Cloak. I guess you don't need a Clear Amulet. Covert Cloak would be fine here to avoid the Snarl drop and still have that boosted Stellar damage, but Yeah, that Expanding Force does no damage to anything. The Dazzling Gleam will chip Persian, but not that much. Calyrex now already forced out. Scrafty comes in. Getting an Intimidate into Lilligant is nice. Lilligant will clear the terrain with an Ice Spinner. So we know now that it doesn't have a fighting type attack because we've seen all of its moves. Victory Dance, Leaf Blade, Ice Spinner, Protect. That makes Scrafty so much more dangerous, at least at face value, into the Crown's team, and they haven't shown an answer to it so far. Persian U-turns out against Indeedee, and we see Chimecho. The Chimecho could have a fairy attack, right? Indeedee starts setting screens. Yep. And we do see Dazzling Gleam from the Chimecho. That does big damage to Scrafty. But Chimecho just drops her Crunch. We see Persian come back. They let Scrafty take a Fake Out. Something like a Leaf Blade crit now could be really dangerous for it. No crit. But it's still getting worn down. But they show the Heal Pulse on Indeedee. Oh, I don't know if anything stops this Scrafty from here. Grovyle's the last Pokemon. Okay, there's the Victory Dance from Lilligant. You still do need to deal with that threat. We see it's Light Clay and Indeedee. The Dazzling Gleam is not doing a lot of damage. Does Grovyle have something to threaten Lilligant? Grovyle does get, like, Acrobatics. Although it probably has an item right now. Indeedee taking a Leaf Blade. Grovyle showing Energy Ball. I have no idea why it has Energy Ball on this team. Isn't Grass Pledge... Or is Energy Ball 90 base power now? Maybe it is stronger than Grass Pledge. I think it was originally 80. But I think they might have buffed it in some generation. It doesn't feel like the greatest use of a move slot when you have Grass Pledge already. But maybe they ran... I haven't run any calcs for any of these teams, right? Maybe they ran some calcs that show that the power difference that I am convincing myself probably exists really does matter in some positions. And also, Grovyle's not that strong anyway. Maybe there just wasn't a better move to run here. So it looks weird to me at face value, but it's entirely possible that I'm missing something. But Indeedee will finally get knocked out by the Persian here. As we see Scrafty come back in, land an Intimidate into Lilligant. You love to see that on the Grovyle's side. Grovyle is wearing down this Persian, but it survives for now, gets a U-turn off, and we see the Golduck come in. Have the Crowns used their Terra? They have not, so Golduck is threatened by this Energy Ball, but maybe it has some useful Terra type here. Yep, Terra Fire. Scrafty doesn't take a whole lot from that -1 Leaf Blade. Or that Ice Beam. It can maybe just Drain Punch through this game. Might get frozen. Or crit. Those are still dangerous, because Scrafty's not hitting the hard... Oh, they have Soak! Oh, the Golduck has Soak! That's really cool. Soak. Gen 5 move, I think. Kind of obscure, but has gotten some competitive play here and there in some formats. As you can see, it turns the target into a water type. So this is something that the Crowns have had available to them all season long. They have a fast, dangerous offensive grass type in Hisui and Lilligant, and they have a reasonably fast water type in Golduck, so they land a Soak into, say, this Scrafty right here. It's that weak to the Leaf Blade. That's another way that they can break through it, even after Chimecho has gone down, and with Lilligant not carrying a fighting type attack. Golduck also survives his Drain Punch. Scrafty might have wanted to switch out there. It did also get crit. Of course, Leaf Blade has a boosted crit rate, so that's another thing that you have to take seriously in a position like this. But yes, Scrafty might have wanted to get rid of the Soak. Instead, it goes down here. That Energy Ball is actually doing not bad damage. So another one will knock Golduck out, but Grovyle gets crit too. Okay, that crit surely mattered, right? Through a light screen. So a lucky turn here from the Crowns. But also, I'm not sure why you don't switch the Grovyle out, or the, not the Grovyle, the Scrafty out to Calyrex. You get one more round of Intimidate and you turn off the Soak. I guess you still have to get rid of the Golduck, or it can just Soak you again. But Calyrex is probably not set up to beat Persian. It also just takes a ton from these Ice-type attacks and gets knocked out before Persian comes back in. But yeah, I think still quite possible that the Grovyles win that if the Scrafty doesn't get crit, because we have now seen probably all of the answers that the Crowns have to Scrafty between the Dazzling Gleam Chimecho and the Soak Leaf Blade combo, but it's still not that convincing. Scrafty is still a menace in this matchup, and maybe we'll see that proven here in Game 3. Scrafty actually leading this time with Dragalge against Lilligant and Golduck, so the Grovyles kind of just throwing their strongest Pokemon at the problem here. Lilligant getting intimidated right away is nice for them. Scrafty does just stay in, so they are kind of risking a Soak here. This Golduck, the Golduck is faster than the Lilligant, by the way. So that's interesting. It's not Scarf Golduck, right? There's no way. We've definitely seen it change moves. Also, well, you could run Scarf Soak in some game plans, but we've definitely seen it change moves. It's just faster than Lilligant. But Scrafty, so they could have just Soak Leaf Bladed here, but they don't. They Ice Beam the Dragalge. Doesn't do that much. The Ice Spinner, that does a bit more, but Dragalge's still here. Lilligant takes some nice Drain Punch damage. Of course, it hasn't set up with a Victory Dance. They get some good damage on Golduck with a Thunderbolt, but Golduck is still here. The Crown's really focusing on targeting down that Dragalge, and they do remove it here. But Scrafty is left free to Drain Punch Lilligant and knock it out, so the Soak Leaf Blade play is no longer available. We do see the Chime Echo come in. This might be... We know it has that Dazzling Gleam. This might be the time to find out what Scrafty's Terra type is. Maybe we haven't seen it yet because it opens up... Well, they Terra Calyrex turn 1 last game. That's why they couldn't Terra Scrafty. But we don't know whether Scrafty's Terra type opens up any weaknesses into this team. When Scrafty generally matches up very well before Terra. But with the Dazzling Gleam on the board, we'll see what happens. We get Indeedee coming in here. Terra Fairy on the Chime Echo. That really doesn't surprise me considering everything we've seen. Golduck Protect, and we get a Light Screen, and just a big Dazzling Gleam. Crits Indeedee. Does a lot of damage to Scrafty. Drain Punch into Golduck does nothing. We see the Persian switch in. We see the Heal Pulse into Scrafty, but Scrafty does not Terrastallize still, so it's not going to take a Dazzling Gleam very well. That Heal Pulse is just keeping it alive, barely. Drain Punch gets it back to half HP, but it takes more than half from that Dazzling Gleam. And still no Terra. They didn't Terra this game, right? Still no Terra. Persian U-turns out. Scrafty is just going to drop to this Dazzling Gleam now, right? Indeedee Dazzling Gleam, but doesn't do a whole lot back, and yeah. The Scrafty just gets blown away, and so does the Indeedee by yet another crit. This is the crits this game are unreal, the crits this set are unreal. But I really feel like the Scrafty was the key to this matchup for the Grovyles, and I don't know what its Terra type is. Maybe whatever it is, it didn't help, but they did just let it get mowed down by this Dazzling Gleam. Of course, I have imperfect information watching these sets. I don't know what choice they had, but it does surprise me. And we see Calyrex as the last Pokemon. They could go for a big Expanding Force. Instead, it's a normal Terra Blast into Golduck. Chimecho clicks Healing Wish, sacrifices itself to bring Persian back. We see the Terra Stellar again on the Calyrex, but of course it's double weak to that U-turn. Stellar Terra Blast doesn't do a whole lot to Persian, and Calyrex will go, the only restricted Pokemon in the league, will go down here. Solid effort, but yeah, I'm so curious now about what that Scrafty's Terra type it was, given that it wasn't Terrastalizing in front of the Fairy Chimecho. But in what looked like a pretty solid matchup for the Grovyles, they do come up just short in the end. Some creative text from the Crowns, some good adjustments over the course of the set, making sure to take the Scrafty seriously and bring the Fairy Chimecho, and the Soak play in Game 2 was really cool. I really don't want to take anything away from the Crowns here. This matchup, to me, I mean, there definitely were ways that it could go either way, but it looked pretty good for the Grovyles, and the Tiny Crowns found the right adjustments and brought the right text in the builder and played through it. So this has been a very Grovyles-centered round of commentary, mostly because the Scrafty captivated my attention so much over the course of this set, but props to the Tiny Crowns for overcoming some tough positions and bringing this one home. Up next, we have the Iridescent Terapagos taking on Pendragon United. The Terapagos have brought the Pikachu and the Pincurchin together, but there is no Alolan Raichu here. I do see the Hisuian Zorua, so it would be interesting to see what that brings to the table in this game, in this set. And the Fire Oricorio that has been an absolute menace so far this season. No one able to solve it. Let's see if the Crowns can, or not the Crowns, that was last set. Let's see if Pendragon United can figure this one out. They do have a lot more threats into the Oricorio than the last two opponents for this team did. Big electric type damage from Vikavolt and even Pachirisu if they want. Big water type damage from Crawdaunt and even Pelipper if they want. They have the rock type Rhydon, so actually almost everything on this team is massively threatening to the Oricorio. I don't know if we'll even see it come to a game. But Yeah, Pikachu ought to be interesting here with the possible Lightning Rod. Pincurchin also could be bringing Lightning Rod instead of Electric Surge if they want. That could significantly weaken the Vicavolt's usefulness in this matchup, and could even flip its matchup against the Aqua Breed Tauros into Tauros' favor. Tauros looks massively threatening into Pokemon like Crawdaunt and Rhydon, so something like a Pikachu Tauros mode or a Pincurchin Tauros mode, yeah, it looks very strong at face value, and we'll see what they brought for it. Obviously, the Pelipper can help deal with the Tauros, but probably have to terrestrialize that if that's your game plan. And who knows what kind of mix-up the Hisuian Zorua will introduce, or the Pachirisu for redirection on the other side, or the Clefable for redirection on this side. Anyway. Correct Mischievous, no Reg I set. Are you using Mischievous and Reg I? That's brave. Anyway, we see Pincurchin and Pikachu leading against Pachirisu and Crawdaunt, electric types galore, and we do see that it is actually Electric Surge Pincurchin after all, but I'm sure the Pikachu has Lightning Rod. Crawdaunt just protects here. Pachirisu sets Light Screen and gets taunted. Okay, Pachirisu will not be able to quick follow me now. So Thunderbolt to Crawdaunt does no damage this turn, but it's pretty safe on the next turn. Tauros switching in. We see this clear Amulet Crawdaunt, and we see Rhydon switch in. Tauros takes a big Super Fang immediately from Pachirisu. And the Lightning Rod Rhydon. I mean, that Thunderbolt wasn't really threatening anything in this position anyway once the Crawdaunt switched out. And it's not like Rhydon is likely to do anything with the special attack boost, but you see now they're willing to bring that. Tauros protecting, so does Rhydon. Pachirisu still unable to quick follow me. It goes for a Nuzzle, but that is in fact redirected by its own teammate's Lightning Rod. Of course, Tauros had protected this turn anyway. We see Muddy Water come out from the Pincurchin. No accuracy drop. We see Terra Grass Rhydon. Makes sense. Really dangerous in this position, actually, because they're because Rhydon is such a threat at face value to Oricorio, you're probably not throwing that Pokemon at it. And then with Terra Grass, it can flip the script on Tauros, and it's still dangerous to Pikachu and Pincurchin and the Alolan Raichu that they didn't bring at the same time. Terra Grass Rhydon could go crazy in this matchup. We'll see. Takes that Water-type Raging Bull very nicely. Tauros gets another Super Fang for its trouble. And the Terra Ground Pincurchin, of course... Thinkboy brought Terra Ground Choice Banded Pincurchin against me in week 1, and it blew up my Galarian Slowking in a critical position. Not going to do that this time, as it just drops to a high horsepower crit from Rhydon. So it's probably, well, we know it's not Choice Banded Pincurchin this time because we've seen it click Thunderbolt and Muddy Water, but whatever it was going for, we don't get to find out this game. Pikachu comes back in. But it's hard to see how Pikachu can really threaten these two Pokemon. Oh, it's not Pikachu, it's Zorua. So it knocks out the Pachirisu with a Shadow Ball. I don't know whether that was the intended target. Pachirisu did manage to click follow me here, and it narrowly survived a high horsepower from Tauros. But yeah, the Zorua disguised Pikachu does actually have some damage, not a ton, probably, because it's a Zorua. Takes a fair bit from that Rock Slide. Now we see the Mischievous come in. Rhydon takes that close combat really nicely. Not the Shadow Ball, not as nicely. But we have a sense now of how the Rhydon is invested, so maybe Iridescent Terapagos will find a way to play around it in Game 2, but Rhydon just dominated Game 1 here. We see the Power Gem Mischievous, so actually every Pokemon on this team has a threat into Oricorio. Oricorio's reputation, I guess, kind of preceded it on this one. And the Rhydon does just complete the sweep here. Looks like a very physically bulky Rhydon, and the Terra Grass is pretty hard for this team to deal with, especially since it has the Rock Slide to threaten Oricorio, and all of its teammates also threaten the Oricorio. So we'll see if the Terapagos find an adjustment here in Game 2. We do see the Oricorio this time with Clefable against Pelipper and Pachirisu. Okay. Oricorio just protecting this turn on a Muddy Water, which misses Clefable, and a Nuzzle. And Clefable... Oh, it's not Clefable, it's Zorua. Well, we know they brought Clefable, but Zorua just goes straight from Memento into Pelipper. That is going to help Oricorio take hits from it, probably, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Terra-type on Oricorio in a moment, but unless that Terra-type is electric, it still has some trouble dealing with Pachirisu's Nuzzle, because it can get paralyzed. We see the real Clefable come in now.
Terra Grass on the Oricorio, so it won't take much damage from a Nuzzle, but it will still be paralyzed, unless it has a Covert Cloak. It could have a Covert Cloak. Pelipper can threaten it with Hurricane, but of course Pelipper is at -2 special attack right now. It just goes for Muddy Water this turn. Gets the accuracy drop on Clefable, but not Oricorio. Pachirisu sets up Light Screen. Oricorio sets up Quiver Dance. Will Oricorio be able to sweep through this one? Well, Rhydon is going to make that potentially tricky, but Rhydon is actually not that well positioned here, right? Because the Oricorio is no longer weak to the Rock Slide. If it has Revelation Dance, that's now a Grass-type move, because that's how that interacts with Terra. Fire-type on this form of Oricorio to begin with, but after the Terra Grass, it's Grass-type. Rhydon can Terra Grass itself, but then it's threatened by the Flying Stab that the Oricorio probably also has. Pachirisu, of course, can still support it with Redirection, and it might still be able to paralyze the Oricorio, unless it has a Covert Cloak, which, the more I think about it, the more I find believable. But of course, there's Redirection on the other side as well. A lot that can still happen here. Pachirisu, even though we saw it in Game 1, I forgot. Pachirisu's Nuzzle is redirected into its partner's Lightning Rod. I even forgot here that it didn't have that available anymore, even though we just saw this interaction previous game. But Clefable going for Thunder. I don't... trying to cover a switch, I guess? Trying to catch Pelipper switching in, I think. Because that doesn't do anything in this position otherwise. Oricorio just protects here. Clefable takes a big Super Fang, eats his Citrus Berry, Moonblast the Pachirisu for some chip. And we see Rock Slide come up from the Rhydon. There's the Follow Me for Pachirisu. There is a Grass-type Revelation Dance, does about half. Clefable with Life Dew, keeping Oricorio healthy. I guess keeping itself healthy is more pressing here, but both Pokemon dodging the Rock Slide. Some crazy luck in both of these last couple sets with like 4 crits in the last one, and now the double Rock Slide miss here. Revelation Dance does finish off the Pachirisu. Clefable keeping itself healthy with the Life Dew, so it looks like this Oricorio is going to be hard to break, but the Pelipper does get a free opportunity to come in here now. Clefable goes for Follow Me. Oricorio just knocks Pelipper out with a Hurricane. But Clefable did not click Life Dew this turn, and the Rock Slides are starting to wear the team down. Groudon goes straight for Terra Water. Is there an Aqua Jet? There is. It's redirected into Clefable. I assume Oricorio was the intended target. Groudon drops the Grass Revelation Dance, but this is now going to be a single target Rock Slide into Oricorio. Does it connect? It does. And Pendragon United. Oh, there's still the Pincurchin. Okay, Protect on Rhydon. Did they Terra? They did with the Groudon last turn. Earthquake one-shots Pincurchin. Pendragon United. Without taking a single point of damage on the Rhydon in Game 2, the Rhydon just crushing its way through both games of this set. Absolute menace in this matchup with the Grass Terra, and then didn't even need it in Game 2, as Pachirisu gave it enough cover in the early game, and then its 2 Water-type teammates gave it enough offensive cover that they were higher priority targets, that Rhydon never had to take a Grass-type Revelation Dance from Oricorio. It broke through with the Rock Slide, and then it closed out this game very nicely. Rhydon looking like an absolute beast this week. You'll love to see it, especially if you're a Pokemon fan from back in the Gen 1 days, that's for sure. One set left, and that is the West Coast Pincurchins taking on the sinister Sinistcha. Pincurchins have their usual, slightly confusing but definitely powerful mix of very strong Pokemon. That Dynamic Punch Golurk has gone crazy so far this season. We have the Talonflame able to set Tailwind for the Gengar, Tatsugiri, and Alolan Sandslash. We have the Stantler able to set Trick Room for the Golurk. All kinds of things could happen here. With this team, you never know. On the Sinistcha side, we see the likely Trick Room duo of Slowking and Hariyama. We see the Scovillain and the Alolan Muck again. Last week, Alolan Muck did not have Power of Alchemy, but it does still have the option, if it wants, to take that Moody from Scovillain this week. They could be running the set this time. We see the Squawkabilly threatening Intimidate into Talonflame, Golurk, and Sandslash, Parting Shot into everything, able to help either one of the setup modes, the Moody stuff or the Trick Room stuff, and we see Glimmet. Glimmet's an interesting bring here. Gengar, of course, can clear any Toxic Spikes that it sets up, but it is dangerous into Talonflame. That might be what it's here for, to be a Rock type, but we'll see. Glimmet actually leading with Scovillain against Talonflame and Golurk. Talonflame goes straight for a Brave Bird into Scovillain, knocks it down to a Focus Sash, and Glimmet just fires back with a Power Gem and knocks out Talonflame. Scoville and lands an immediate Will-O-Wisp into Golurk, and the Pincurchins, maybe anticipating that the Brave Bird would just knock or force Scoville out, do not take the KO into it. Instead, despite Golurk being burned, Dynamic Punch still does big damage to Glimmet, and confuses it, of course. They do get a layer of Toxic Debris. We'll see if the Gengar comes in and clears that. Scovillain's Moody gives it a defense boost this turn at the cost of special attack. Given that it's at 1 HP, maybe that's not worthwhile, but we'll see what it's setting up for. Tatsugiri comes in and gets poisoned. Alolan Muck comes in. The way it switched in like that makes me think it might have Power of Alchemy, and it does this week. That is now Moody Alolan Muck on the field. It did take a fair bit of damage this turn, but healed up nicely with that Leftovers. That is Moody Alolan Muck on the field. It just got a special defense boost. And, of course, Tatsugiri is poisoned. Golurk is burned, so can the Pincurchins break through before the residual damage does too much to them? We'll find out. Hariyama is the last Pokemon for the Sinistcha. And there is, in fact, confirmed no Gengar as Stantler switches in and gets poisoned. Every Pokemon left on this side now has a damaging status condition. The Talonflame was of course, immune to Toxic Spikes and Burn, but it got removed quickly turn 1 by that Glimmet. So really, the Sinistcha game plan really taking shape very nicely here. Alolan Muck protects. It is still somewhat threatened by the Golurk. Golurk takes a knockoff, loses Life Orb and a lot of its HP. That Poltergeist chips the Hariyama, but the Muck is the biggest problem here. Golurk already close to fainting. Rock Slide will not quite knock it out, but it could flinch. It doesn't flinch. It goes for its own Rock Slide. Does not do much damage with the burn. Muck does flinch here. And it's forced out by Stantler's Roar. Wait, that's such a cool attack. The Roar Stantler. Of course, Roar, negative priority, but still higher priority than Trick Room. So you can use it to deny Trick Room from something like Slowking by forcing it out before it can execute the move. But also, we see the other use of Roar in this matchup right here, as it does immediately remove the Muck's... Not only does it remove the Muck's boosts, but also, Muck's ability is not Moody, it's Power of Alchemy. It has Moody because Power of Alchemy activated and copied it, but unless I'm very much mistaken, it should come back in with Power of Alchemy again. It should not have Moody available for the rest of the game. So the Roar Stantler is a really good tech in this set. I love it. There's been a lot of good creative stuff this week across the board. And I'm glad we're seeing more of that here in the last set. Golurk does drop here. We see the Tatsugiri come in. Muck switching in. Tatsugiri showing the Flying Terra. Too bad it couldn't click that before it came in on Toxic Spikes. Rude. And the Glimmet living up to its name, doing a lot of damage with that Sludge Bomb. Tatsugiri could maybe have knocked it out with Muddy Water, but instead we see Flying Terra Blast, which does some chip into Muck, but that plus Body Slam still misses the KO. Poison damage is still adding up. Yeah, Muck doesn't have its boost anymore. It does have Protect, and a Sludge Bomb from Glimmet knocks out Tatsugiri. Stantler finally does knock out the Glimmet here, but it is the only Pokemon left standing on its side. The Muck now has Toxic Debris. The Hariyama is still there in the back, so as much as I got excited about that Roar play, and I did really like it, it was very cool. Muck can set up with Minimize now. The Sinister Sinistcha are still in the driver's seat here. Removing that Talonflame turn 1 did a lot for them in... Well, the whole turn 1 did a lot for them in this game. Removing the Talonflame and burning the Golurk and getting their Toxic Debris up created a position that was just really hard to break through for the Pincurchins. Now they know what that game plan is. Maybe they'll find an adjustment to it. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see the Gengar in Game 2, but I'm still excited about the Roar Stantler, but it wasn't enough in the end. Of course, that was only Game 1. Let's see what happens from here. Squawkabilly leading with Glimmet. The Glimmet has been such a menace so far, just clicking big attacks for big damage, even though it's such a small Pokemon. We see the Gengar in the lead, actually. I would have sooner expected it to be in the back, but maybe it's just looking for a quick KO into Glimmet. Of course, it doesn't have to worry about Intimidate. Gengar actually just protects this turn. And does the Talonflame not have Gale Wings, or did it go for something other than a Flying type move? I thought maybe we'd see Tailwind from the Talonflame right away here. Maybe that's not important. You know, maybe that's not the highest priority into this team. Maybe it went for like Steel Wing into Glimmet. I don't know, but it is slower than Glimmet, and it does just drop to a Power Gem once again. We see Lash Out from the Squawkabilly. I know that's a dark type attack. I don't otherwise remember how it works. It's physical. It's like 70 base power, I think. It has some kind of condition that boosts its damage. I do not remember what that is. We see the Tatsugiri come in. Glimmet switching out. We see Scovillain and Muck. Those two menaces taking that Dazzling Gleam from Gengar very nicely. Scovillain knocked out by Draco Meteor from Tatsugiri. It won't get a chance to cause any havoc in this game, except it does pass its ability to Muck right away. Tatsugiri forced out by its own eject pack that will reset the Draco Meteor special attack drop. The Golurk coming in. The Golurk is pretty well positioned here, actually, right? Because it's not burned this time. Scovillain is knocked out. It's not going to have the opportunity to burn Golurk. Unless I'm confused about how No Guard works. I think Golurk probably can't miss the Muck, even if Muck sets up Minimize, and Muck hasn't done that yet, and it hasn't gotten a defense boost. So they actually have the greatest possible threat to Golurk on the field right now. That said, oh, is it Scarf Glimmet? The way they're playing this Glimmet, it's definitely Scarfed, isn't it? We see the ground Terra Blast into Gengar, knocking it down to a Focus Sash, and getting disabled. So if it's Scarf Glimmet, it won't be able to do that again. Anyway, it gets KO'd here. And Golurk just drops to a knockoff from Muck. So, okay, ignore anything that I said about Muck being threatened by this Golurk. It makes some sense on paper. Muck did get +2 attack from that Moody, though, and it does just one-shot the Golurk. So Muck could be, once again, very hard to deal with. It gets a speed boost now. But it has lowered its special defense twice, so maybe Gengar has a way to do big damage to Muck before it goes down. But +2 attack, +2 speed, that Muck does look like a threat. We see Tatsugiri come back in. Gengar protecting this turn as Tatsugiri takes a lot from a knockoff, but it's not KO'd. It does big damage back with Muddy Water. Muck does survive. Muck gets another special defense drop. That's just unreal. Imagine being the coach in this position. Just taking special defense drops every turn. We see the Terraflying Tatsugiri. Gengar Dazzling Gleam will clean up the Muck after all those special defense drops, and Muddy Water will clean up the Squawkabilly. And yeah, removing the Talonflame once again didn't accomplish anything this game, but removing the Scovillain quickly, and having the Gengar with the Focus Sash able to trade damage and knock out the Glimmet. And they just overwhelmed Muck once it got 3 special defense drops in a row. A little bit of luck there, but some pretty solid play from the Pincurchins as well. And we are going to Game 3. Will Scovillain and Muck go for their setup again? And if so, how will it turn out? We get Hariyama and Glimmet leading this time against Tatsugiri and Talonflame. Hariyama goes immediately for Terra Dark and fakes out the Talonflame. That, of course, will turn off Gale Wings. So even if Talonflame went for something like a Brave Bird or even Feather Dance this turn, it will just drop to a Power Gem. For the 3rd game in a row, Talonflame unable to do anything. Glimmet knocked out back by a Draco Meteor. We know that Tatsugiri has the Eject Pack, so we'll see both of the other Pokemon for the Pincurchins here. They are Golurk and Alolan Sandslash. No Gengar this time is interesting, but I guess their plan for Game 3 just involved getting that big damage into the Glimmet immediately and removing it so they don't have to worry about toxic debris. But we'll see what the Sandslash brings here. It's maybe in some positions more threatening into Muck and Squawkabilly if it has a Clear Amulet. Let's find out. Nope, it does get intimidated, but it is of course very threatened by this Hariyama. So I'm a little bit puzzled by the Sandslash bring. I'm still not sure why you don't bring Gengar again, but maybe we'll find out. Terra Fairy, okay. That'll make it less threatened by Hariyama. Golurk takes a Parting Shot. It's at -2 attack now. Very Terra Blast from the Sandslash. Okay. So that's what they have to deal with the Hariyama in its Game 3 return here. They take that Drain Punch pretty nicely. The Sandslash makes a little bit more sense now. Also, Gengar would be threatened by probably a knockoff from this Hariyama. So, I mean, that's the thing. Commentating with imperfect information, I don't see the vision sometimes until it plays out on the board. The Sandslash might be able to close this one out for them. We'll find out. Golurk really not doing much with that Rock Slide, though. And the Squawkabilly pivoting back in. That's -3 attack on Golurk, -2 on Sandslash. Golurk does just switch out to Tatsugiri. Tatsugiri, of course, an offensive threat. -2 Sandslash. It still does some decent chip to Squawkabilly with the Fairy Terra Blast, but, I mean, Squawkabilly still takes another of those. And Slowking gets the Trick Room up. We see Golurk come in on a Psychic, and it gets the drop. Squawkabilly does a little over half to Tatsugiri with Lash Out, but Tatsugiri could be doing some big damage back. It does knock out Squawkabilly, but with Muddy Water, it's not doing a lot to Slowking. Now we have Slowking and Hariyama and Trick Room. There is no Scovillain Muck setup in this game. Just 3 turns for these 2 Pokemon to try to break through the opponent. They are both slower than the Golurk. Golurk drops to a Psychic. Tatsugiri drops to a Drain Punch. We don't even see Protects from the Pincurchins, so Alolan Sandslash comes back in. Still in 2 turns of Trick Room. It is threatening a big Fairy Terra Blast into Hariyama, but I doubt that it beats Slowking from here, but let's find out. Scald. Ooh, that could also burn. It does more than half, even without a burn. Sandslash does survive the knockoff. We see that it had a Choice Band. It goes for Leech Life into Hariyama. If it still had its Choice Band, that would have KO'd. And then, let's see the recovery. It's still not enough. It would, since it has Choice Band, we know it can't protect. Even if it knocked out the Hariyama there with Choice Banded damage, Hariyama only has 2% HP left. Sandslash doesn't get over 50 with the recovery. It still just is knocked out by Scald next turn. So, once the Sinistcha got their Trick Room set up, they had this one anyway. But Sandslash, putting up a solid effort, drops to a Psychic. And this goes to show why this Sinistcha team is so dangerous, right? Because what caught my attention right away after the draft was that Trick Room core featuring Slowking, Hariyama, and, well, we didn't see it this set, Copperajah. But they only got that set. They only set that up this time in the end game of Game 3. And then they just crushed from there. But after the opponent bent their game plan out of shape, probably covering for all the other threats that the Sinistcha could throw at them. The Scarf Glimmet and the Muck setup. And the Sinistcha took this set. Again, not using their most obvious, really good mode until the last moment. But that's what makes this team so threatening. They have a lot of different things they can throw at you. And it's extremely hard to cover for everything. I'm definitely getting scared knowing that I'll play this team later this season. But anyway, that was Week 3 of the Prismatic Draft League. It definitely feels like some coaches are getting more comfortable with their drafts as we go through this. As we saw a lot of really creative and interesting techs this set. I mean, that Sandslash Fairy Terra Blast into Dark Hariyama, that's Draft League right there. If you don't like that, you don't like Draft League Pokemon. And it's probably only going to get better over the remaining 5 weeks of the regular season. We're going to see some crazy plays. So let's all stick around and find out what happens, how this plays out, and ultimately who brings home this PDL championship.